Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live. My name is Aaron Nace, and welcome to Pro Tips, expanding your portraits. And today we're going to be using the brand new Generative Fill in Photoshop. Now, I'm going to be using the Photoshop beta in this session, so if you haven't already done so, be sure to download the beta. And if you have access to the regular Photoshop through your Creative Cloud subscription, you also have access to the beta. We're going to have so much fun today. This is going to be really cool. We got a really great examples on how to expand your portraits and then how to use them in varieties of ways. A lot of the times as designers, as photographers, like our images are used in many different circumstances. Let's say they're going to be used for an advertisement, maybe on the web, and they need to be wider and include some messaging from, the advertiser or the company, or maybe they need to be really tall and include that information. So today we're going to show you how to combine portraits and different images with different branding and messaging and show you how to do it in a number of different ways. That's really easy, and we've got Generative Fill to help us out along the way. Thanks so much. Join us in the chat. I've got the chat pulled up here on my phone so I can actually see you guys. It's so good to see you guys. Carol says, Aaron, you faded, looking vintage. Okay. Thank you so much. Vintage coming at you. You guys are looking so good. Good. Thank you so much for joining me in the chat. We're going to have so much fun. Don't forget, if you have any questions for me during the chat, I am here. I'm here for you. You can ask me anything you want in the chat, and we'll get you answered. We'll get you answered. We're going to have so much fun. Alrighty, well, let's go ahead and jump into our first image. We actually have a few different examples today, but we're going to go ahead and work through our first image. We're going to do like a sample, like medical care advertisement, basically. And again, I'm in the Photoshop beta here. All right, so I've got my main image here. This is our subject here on the left-hand side, and then I've got two there we go, two little advertisements or fake brands or fake companies here. So we have this medical care and then this other one that says, we believe in making a difference. So I want to combine these together with my original image. Let me just pull up I have a great program that allows me to highlight different areas. Okay, cool. So we're going to go ahead and bring these together. So the first thing I want to do, I've got these in separate documents. The first thing I want to do is grab my move tool right up here. And we're going to just grab this, and this is all Adobe stock, by the way. So you can use Adobe stock, you can use any type of stock, and of course you can use your own images or anything you get from your clients. So we're going to go ahead and click and drag from one image over to the other, and then I'm going to hit F for full screen. So basically now I've got two different layers. There we go. And we're going to be combining these together. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to hit Control Command T to transform, and let's go ahead and make that a little bit smaller. There we go on our canvas. And then zoom in here. I just want to go ahead and crop. So my goal here is I want to integrate these two different images. And again, the whole goal of today is to create a few different examples of how we're actually going to be integrating portraits and other types of photography with graphics and other imagery, so we can create campaigns and things like that, just to make it a lot more versatile. So the first thing we're going to do, we need to expand our image. So I'm going to hit C for the crop tool. Now, if you're using your crop tool, you have up here at the very top, you have a new option. You can just do a regular crop, which is the transparent default. You can do a generative expand, and then content aware fill, which has been here for a while. So we're just going to do the regular crop. So let's just go to the transparent default crop. And I'm just going to click here and drag down. Basically, let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit. We'll just drag down a good bit. There we go. And then I'm going to take our little messaging and we're just going to bring that all the way down until our image ends. So as you can see here, I'm just kind of I want to join these two together. There we go. So that looks pretty good. Now, of course, when we're actually wanting to combine images like this, this is a pretty standard thing, picture of a doctor or whatever, we believe in making a difference. Let's go ahead and crop this up a little bit. Perfect. And hit enter there. And this might be already kind of suitable for an advertisement, but I want to make it a little bit more interesting. I want to add a better transition between this area. We believe in making a difference. And you can see it has this tear effect here in the actual paper itself. It looks like the paper is tearing. Now, I want to take that effect, this tear effect, and I want to add it to the transition between my photo and the paper underneath it. I wanted to make it look like the photo is actually tearing away, or the paper is tearing away. for that transition. Now, typically this would be like very kind of like difficult to do because we basically have to figure out how to do this completely from scratch. But we're going to be using Adobe Firefly right here in Photoshop to get the job done. All right, so here's how we're going to do it. So I'm going to hit M for my marquee tool. So just a regular marquee tool. Now we're going to just click over the area that we'd actually like to affect. There we go. Let's go ahead and just select that area. So we're selecting the transition. And I know generative fill and generative expand can be used in so many different ways, and we're going to be using it in a few different ways today. But one thing it can also do is kind of like help us bridge the gap between two different pieces of content. And that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so we've got this basically border between our photo and the area on the bottom. We've got these selected. I'm going to go ahead and click on generative fill. Now here with generative fill, let's just go ahead and bring that down there. It says, what would you like to generate? Now, if you just hit generate, it's just going to do whatever it thinks it should be doing here, which is totally cool most of the time. But in this case, I'm going to just type in tear because like the paper here is torn and I want to do the same thing here in my generative fill. So I'm going to click on tear and see what it gives us. So let's go ahead and click on generate. And by now we probably know all about generative fill, but you do have to be connected to the internet for this to work. This is all happening on super fast servers somewhere out there in the world. And then it's like basically giving us back different variations on this tear effect. And look how awesome that is. Like amazingly good, right? It knew what we wanted to do, what like we told it, right? Like it go ahead and include this tear, and it gave us this tear, making it look exactly like that was there from the beginning. And of course, here in our properties window, we have a few different options of how we'd like this to actually look. So let's go ahead and click through a few of these and see how they look. I like that one. I think it's looking really good. And don't forget, you always have the option. You can click on generate here again, and it'll generate a few more options for you. Now, this comes in at its own layer. You can turn it off and on. You can choose these options at any different time. So this is a non-destructive editing technique. All right, there we go. Go ahead and click through them, and then we can just kind of decide, hey, which one of these do we actually like? And I think that one actually looks really good. A couple people from the chat are thinking it was a tear from an I. Yeah, a tear or a tear. I guess it is spelled the same way. But here we can see, like, you know, what was a very simple transition now because of generative fill and Adobe Firefly. Like we have this really cool tear effect between like the doctor and like the slogan itself. So a really cool use for this generative fill. Now we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to just exit out of full screen. There we go. And what we're going to do, I'm going to just control click on both of these layers. So the layer 1 and layer 0, we're going to right click here, and then we're just going to go to duplicate layers. There we go. And I'm just going to duplicate this to a new document. That's kind of my trick. Anytime I want like a couple different layers on a new PSD, I'll just click on those layers and duplicate them. All right, so we've got our first example here. Let's go ahead and save that. There we go. Perfect. Put this in my PSD folder. I'm just going to call this 01. Perfect. Okay, now we want to do this basically the same thing, but I want to go ahead and make this wider. So we're going to take our image here. Let's go ahead and bring it over to the right-hand side. C for the crop tool, and then we're going to click and drag out. There we go. And just basically expand our image out. And then let's go ahead and make this a little bit larger. Control Command T, and we're going to just click and make this a little bit wider. Because all the time, I don't know about you guys, but like I find, you know, I'm always having to make like banner ads, horizontal ads, vertical ads, all kinds of stuff, right? So it's really, really helpful to be able to make like different sizes of content with the same exact information. Okay, so let's say we have, you know what, I'm gonna expand this a little bit wider. We're just gonna make like a true like banner ad. Let's say this is something that's gonna be for, there we go, something on the web. Let's just crop this in a little bit smaller from the top and the bottom, so it looks like a web ad. There we go, perfect. And let's bring the doctor's head down a little bit. All right, so let's say we have like our client has given us the dimensions. So we've got like a really long banner ad that we need to make. And then like, this is kind of like all that we have, right? It's like, okay, I want you to combine this photo and I want you to combine that. And I want you to give us like a banner ad. Well, thankfully now we have a way to fill in all of this blank space. And we can do this again with generative fill. So the first thing we're going to do, let's go ahead and focus on the doctor on the left side of the image here. There we go. Let's just turn that off. And in the chat, Masha's asking if we are using a smart object. In this case, we're just using 2 regular layers. You could definitely use smart objects and then replace the content from those smart objects at any time. In this case, we're just using regular layers. So let's go ahead and click on our doctor image. And I'm going to just use my marquee tool. Again, we're going to make a selection here on the left-hand side, a marquee selection. And then I'm going to just do the same thing on the right-hand side. Not super huge, but I'm holding Shift as I'm making my selection with the marquee tool. So it's selecting the left, and here it's selecting the right. There we go. Perfect. And then we're just going to click on generative fill right here. And in this case, I'm not going to type in anything because I want it to just give me whatever it thinks should be there. So let's go ahead and hit generate here. There we go. And that's the fun thing with this tool is like, you never know what it's going to give you. It's going to give you like what it thinks should be there. And it's going to give you a few options, but I have no idea. Most of the time it's pretty good. And this actually looks great. So like we have a few different options. I can click through them. Let's hit generate one more time. You can do that right here in your properties window or on your contextual taskbar. Dr. Aaron Nace says, Mohammed, thank you. Photoshop doctor. Don't come to me for medical advice. I don't, not qualified. There we go. So clicking on a few different options here. Cool. I kind of like this one. It's nice and simple. We've got some good stuff in the background there. Okay, so we've gone from this to that, all with generative fill. And then we're going to go ahead and turn our ad on as well. Now, for this ad, we're going to do a few different things. The first thing I want to do is actually like expand this out a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and move this over to the right just a little bit. There we go. And we're going to expand this in a couple of different ways. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to hit M for my marquee tool. Let's go ahead and click and drag to make a selection on the top of this area. And then we're going to go to edit, and I'm going to go down to content aware scale because I actually just want to stretch this up while preserving as much information as I possibly can. And I don't really need to use generative fill for this. So let's just go to content aware scale. There we go. Click and drag up, and I'm going to hold the shift key to make sure it just goes straight up. There we go. Perfect. We're going to do the same thing down here. Select on the bottom with the marquee tool, content aware scale. There we go. Click there, hold down the shift key to make sure it goes all the way down to the bottom. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. Edit content aware scale one more time. There we go. Hold the shift key down. Perfect. So I know generative fill is super fun and fancy and amazing, but don't forget, we've still got all these other amazing tools in Photoshop. So content aware scale, there we go. And we're going to just bring that over there. And I'm just holding down the shift key. Okay, cool. So here we already have like, our doctor on the left. We believe in making a difference on the right. And then let's go ahead and zoom in here and basically do the same thing with that little tear because I want this area to be a little bit more interesting. So let's go ahead and select that area there. We're going to hit generative fill and we're just going to type in tear one more time, just like we did last time. All right. And luckily it does know the difference between tear and tear in the chat. Everyone's like, I thought you were talking about tears, like crying, but yeah, thankfully it knows the difference. And it's giving us a few different options. Let's go ahead and generate one more time so we can have our options. I love it. Thanks for chiming in the chat. This is so much fun. All right. There we go. Almost done. And there we go. That looks really good. So we believe in making a difference here on the right-hand side and then our doctor on the left-hand side. And all of a sudden, we've got this really nice, very long banner ad with our little slogan that perfectly integrates into the image with this tear. And don't forget, like a lot of this really was not there when we started. So let's go back to our layers. We can just turn all these layers off. So basically like this is what we started with here, just this image of our person. And then we had this. Remember, we actually expanded this as well. So it wasn't that large when we began. We expanded our image and we added that little tear on the right-hand side. So just like a really cool way that we can use the same elements. Let's just get out of full screen here. There we go. We can use the exact same elements. There we go. For creating like a vertical ad or a horizontal ad. And this happens all the time. You're trying to make your own images that fit a certain, pixel range, or whether you're doing a banner ad for the web, like a vertical ad, either you're using your own images or you're going to get something for the client, things like that, making mock-ups, and you don't have that many assets, but they're asking you to make like boom, 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 all these different sizes and ratios and combinations of things like that. So generative fill is extremely helpful for that. All right, now we're going to do one more thing here. We're just going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate my background layer. So let's go ahead and duplicate that background layer to a new icon. Perfect. There we go. And then let's say that we want this like medical care. There we go. So I've got a different logo here. Fantastic. We've got a different logo and I want to integrate these two as well. And let's go ahead and just make my image a little bit less wide. There we go. This can be for like a header of a website or something like that. All right, so let's go ahead and bring our doctor over there. Perfect. And then obviously this is like a very standard transition, doctor, medical care, but I want to make it more interesting. So let's go ahead and make our doctor image a little bit wider. So let's make our selection, M for the marquee tool. I'm just going to select this entire image all the way to the right, and we're going to go ahead and hit generate. Use generative fill to just expand it way over. Like this is such a common thing that, even with photography, especially if you're shooting for like a company or media or a brand, a lot of the time they want a lot of like blank space so they can put their messaging, like wherever they want it. This looks good. There are some like things I want to get rid of. So I'm going to use our lasso tool to select things. Generative fill, like it's really incredible for expanding portraits and images, but it's also really good for just getting rid of stuff. Like I have all these lines here from, glass or whatever it is, and I just want all this gone. So I'm just selecting all this stuff here just with our polygonal lasso tool real quick, nice and easy. And then I'm just going to generative fill it out because it's just a little bit distracting in my opinion. There we go. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and select this out here, and then we'll hit generative fill there. All right. Fantastic. All right. Thanks so much for joining us in the chat, Mash. This is looking really good. It's so much fun. And this sort of thing, honestly, like you could do this in the past for sure in Photoshop, but it's just easier than ever now. Fantastic. So all that stuff is gone now. Okay. So I still have my like medical care thing that I have here, but I want to integrate these a little bit better. First thing I want to do is like this medical care logo. Right now, this is just attached as a JPEG, right? Like there's like the text and the icon, they are in the same layer as this white background. So I actually want to like remove them from the white background. So let's go to our layer one. First thing I want to do is select this white. I'm going to select the white of the background. There we go. Select. We're going to go down to color range. So the white of the background, we're going to select, just use your eyedropper to click on the selection. And I'm going to bring my slider all the way up and hit OK there. So I've got the white selected as my color range. And then on the layer, there we go. I'm just going to click right down here on my layer mask icon. There we go. Let's click there. And then I'm going to invert this, Controller Command I to invert it. And then I've got my medical care. Let's just go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. I've got my medical care with my icon looking good. And then I've got it on a transparent background. Now, I still kind of like how it looked with a white. It was a little bit easier to read. So we're going to then bring that white background back. And I'm going to use that with our brand new gradient tool. So let's hit G for the gradient tool. There we go. We're going to go to our gradient tool. Up here, we want to make sure we're selected on gradient, not the classic gradient. We're going to use the brand new gradient tool. Perfect. And then we're going to just go to basic, and then I'm going to do a foreground to transparent gradient. There we go. And we're going to bring this over from the right over here to the left, keeping in mind that I can change this gradient now at any time, even my midpoint. There we go. We can go ahead and bring that over as well. And then we can just have this fade out really nice and easily. And I'm going to just duplicate that so it's a little bit stronger. Fantastic. So now we have like a really nice transition in which we have our subject here, we have our medical care here. You know what? I'm going to bring all this to the right. Let's just bring all that to the right a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit more interesting. And then here, let's just make that stuff invisible real quick. We're just going to do another generative fill right here on the top. There we go. So I can change my composition really easily at any time by just moving all these things around. Masha says, I didn't know you could have so many selections for one generative fill. You can, and the cool thing about that too is if you have more than one selection active at the same time, the results that you're going to get are actually going to be more cohesive. It's going to try to put like basically similar things in each of those selection areas. So it actually like can function a little bit better when you do have more than one area selected at the same time. So now, as you can see, I can move my background, I can move my subject here as much as I want because I have all this new information. There we go. I can bring them over and I can bring my logo right there and get a really nice composition. There we go. Let's go ahead and bring that over right about there. And then of course the gradient, if I just hit G for my gradient tool, I can kind of bring this over however, there we go, however I want and make this look really nice and clean and professional. And there we go. We've got like, you know, basically the making of a header image for, you know, medical website or whatever. Obviously, there we go. That's just a little advertisement pop up there. So obviously all this information we could use really, really nicely to like basically create all these different types of advertisements. And it really didn't take long. I mean, what we have like basically from the same elements, we started off with our doctor on the top. We got this, we believe in making a difference right below with the tear effect. We did the same thing on the right, and then we did the same thing with the medical care on the right as well. All right, just drinking a little bit of water there. So we can see how generative fill can be so extremely useful for creating all these different examples, basically with pretty much the same assets. All right, now for our second example, we're gonna just move into our second example here. We've got a couple of images here. We've got a bakery, there we go, and we've got some bread. So let's go ahead, we're just gonna move this bakery icon over here and hit F for full screen. All right, so I've got a couple of goals here. My first thing that I wanna do is I want this bakery like logo here. I wanna like invert the colors here, and I wanna go ahead and cut this out. So I'm going to go to select and then down to color range one more time. There we go. Select color range. And I'm actually just going to click here on the color range, this dark color. There we go. And hit OK. So I've got the dark color selected here on this bakery. Now, what we're going to do is create a new layer, and I'm going to hit Shift Delete, and that's going to bring up our fill dialog. You can also go to Edit and then down to Fill. All right. There we go. And we're just going to go ahead and fill that with white. Fantastic. So we went ahead and filled that with white. Let's make that everything else invisible. And then I'm going to use my marquee tool. Fantastic. And we're just going to invert that and then go ahead and delete it. Okay. So basically we started off with this like JPEG. There we go. And then we have our new image. So we have, I started off with our JPEG. We basically like cut this logo out, and then I want to make like kind of like a little ad for it. So like expanding everything out. So let's go ahead. We're going to just turn this off temporarily, C for the crop tool. And now we're going to use generative expand right in the crop tool. So let's go ahead here from our transparent. We're going to go to generative expand, and we're just going to click and drag this up and out. Fantastic. There we go. And again, we're using generative fill to just give us more information here. So if we needed to use this for a company or for a brand or anything like that, we can very, very easily do that. All right, and these options look really great. Like, as we can see, here's like the before and the after looking really good, and we've got a lot more information there. So now we can take this information here. We've got our little like bakery logo thing. All right, go ahead and center that. And bring that up. And then the next thing I want to do is I want this like bakery like logo here. I want this to actually appear behind the piece of bread. So another really great tip. Let's go ahead and click on our background layer, and we're going to use select and then down to select subject. Now, a lot of times we think of this as basically just selecting people, but you can also select like whatever the main subject of your image is. And in this case, it's bread, right? So I've got my selection of the bread active, and we're going to go ahead and turn on our little logo here. And then we're just going to click on our layer mask icon. So let's go ahead and click on layer mask. I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click on that. And it's going to go ahead and automatically cut it out. And what I'm going to do also is I'm going to unlink the logo from the layer mask and then click on the layer mask. And I'm just going to use the down arrow a couple times to bring that up and down. So let's just zoom in there. You can, there we go. Zoom in there. I can hit the up and down arrow on my keyboard to move my layer mask up and down. And a lot of the time, this just helps me get like a little bit better of a layer mask. And then another quick tool here, I'm going to just use the smudge tool on the layer mask. So I'm not smudging the image itself. I'm actually just smudging the layer mask. There we go. To give us a little bit more of that like depth of field effect. Because as you can see right now, it's like a little bit like it kind of looks like scratchy, things like that. So I'm just using the smudge tool to kind of like bring this down. And again, I'm not actually smudging my image at this point. I'm smudging the layer mask itself. And now I have a much cleaner mask between the logo and the actual content of the image. There we go. Whereas before, it was more like this. You could kind of like see the boundary. I'm exaggerating here, but you could kind of see the boundary between the two. And here in the after, it's looking a lot better. So there we have a few different examples. Look how awesome that looks. The last thing I want to do is I'm going to double click here. We're going to go to a color overlay, and I'm just going to choose my color from the actual bakery itself. There we go. From the image, that actually looks really good. Rather than just going with a pure white, we're drawing colors from the image itself, and we have a nice cohesive image. There we go, guys. Thank you so much for joining today's stream. I know it was super quick, but I hope you learned a lot and you can see how generative fill can be extremely helpful for everyday uses. Join us for our next session. We're going to do how to edit a full portrait session in under 60 minutes with Alexa Mazzarello. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you in the next section.